Welcome to episode number 20. I am your host, Sebastian Engstrom, and today Nikhil Kale joins us. He is such a light work, and I'm saying that in a way of elevating entrepreneurs, game changers. I mean, whatever you're doing, trailblazers. The guy works with them all to elevate not just their physical performance, what they do in this physical world, but also realizing, all right, how do I deal with all this baggage, this trauma, this stuff that's in me in my past? How to release that so I can more clearly get after it, clearly see my vision, and execute on what I want to execute on. We get into his story, how he just was stuck in this plane and got really clear on, all right, I need to just step into my truth, my reality, and speak to it and do it. And that's what he did. Enjoy this phenomenal conversation. And if you feel like this is bringing you joy, value, bringing you up, please, I ask you, return the favor. Apple, scroll down, click 5 stars, takes you 5 seconds. Or hit click, subscribe, like, whatever platform you're on. This helps us spread the message to more people, as this is healing. If you haven't done so, check out the 2 CrossFit programs that we recently released, Methodical CrossFit, Gymnastics CrossFit program. They are structured, methodical, 3 to 5 times a week. I do them myself. I research and I've done so many programs, over 15 years. Finally, I put this out because this is what I want to do and what I've done, but I don't see anyone else doing it. It's not you're just laying in a pool of sweat. You can't do anything. This is actually going to get you stronger, more skilled, fitter, shredded. You're going to get the support and help from me in the app too, with videos, instructions, and ask me any questions. Check it out, 7-day free trial, 15% off with Safina Caps 15 at safina.io or safinastrength.com. Enjoy the conversation with Nikhil. Nikhil, amazing to have you here. Freaking fantastic, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's about time. Really looking forward to dropping in with you and just sharing space.
So we just did a breathing exercise, and if anyone, breathing and connecting deep is your forte. The sessions and the journeys that I've been through with you have been out of this world. Everything from swirling green light in pyramids and seeing ancient figures, you name it, and you facilitated it. What came up for you when we did this exercise?
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for your willingness to go deep and to experience all the hidden layers of life. And I love the exercise that we just did. And what really came up to me was my father and forgiveness for him. It's been a continual layered process, but that's what came alive. And then seeing him in a happy, joyful, free place that brought so much joy to me.
So would you want to go into why you think your father came up?
Yeah. So, we all have core wounding, right? And it's generally quite multifaceted, but I've had a massive core wounding with my father, whom I was abused by at a young age. And it's been a deep process of, healing that and just reconciling that and empathizing and forgiving. And specifically in the last week, I was doing an exercise as part of a coaching certification I'm part of, which is to amplify pleasure, amplify play and joy. So if you're feeling a sense of joy or pleasure, you consciously, amplify or elevate it. And I've always been able to tap into joy and blissful states just at a whim, but sustaining them has been an issue. And I've always wondered why. But it kind of landed a few days ago that I have an association with joy and feeling good and pleasure with feeling unsafe and feeling guilt, which is to do with the sexual experiences that I had. And then I was like, oh shit, because I almost feel guilty feeling too good, or I feel unsafe feeling good because I don't know what's going to come and take that away or mess with that. So it's been alive and another layer around that healing that needs to take place, and shifting my relationship to the masculine and myself even further.
Yeah, I can resonate with that deeply, as I had a similar realization, is that I am trying to recreate chaos and recreate a yelling relationship, because that's what I experienced with my father and my mother at a very early age, at around 1 to 2, and then they split up, and it was very chaotic and it was a lot of yelling. And that's, interestingly enough, what I'm trying to recreate subconsciously, because I associate that with love, which is just, it sounds insane, but I don't feel safe when it's too quiet, or when I'm happy, when I'm laughing, which is very interesting. And it sounds like it's something similar with you. How do I feel safe and sustain that within myself?
Very, very similar. I've been literally creating chaos my whole life and been running away my whole life and been doing, and never really finding that fulfillment or satisfaction. And it's just funny how we perpetuate those cycles. Yet at the same time, you know, as you have also experienced, we've been influenced in a very powerful way during our formative years, which have created these patterns and responses to life. And, you know, I see them playing out over and over and over again. And it's a beautiful awareness to have, but also I feel that we do deserve peace and we deserve play and we deserve joy. So I'm just calling more of that in my life.
That's amazing. And I just, well, I want to honor you for being brave and taking it there and being a way shower, as you have been for me so many times, and really accessing being brave enough to go into that practice. And maybe we can go into what is it, how would you describe what you do today? Like, how do you make a difference in this world, Nikhil?
Great question. And at times that question is hard to answer because I'm so visionary and I'm quite multifaceted. And a lot of my work is bridging together various disciplines into a new offering or a new service or a new technology that is beneficial to mankind. But if I want to be really grounded and practical, on one side, I'm a mentor, energetic coach. I'm into trauma work, and I use my clairvoyant abilities in that front as well to help and guide entrepreneurs and leaders and conscious beings to step into their power, to heal their wounds and to integrate the various facets of themselves to amplify their creativity into the world. And that's in parallel with some other areas that I've been working on over the past years, which has been brand strategy, user experience design, bridging technology in the digital space to help these individuals get the message into the world, and to create more impact. And I've also been involved in multiple startups over the years as well, working with things like, working around the areas of consciousness and personal development and self-growth, and finding innovative ways to assist the world. So as you can probably tell, that's my primary thrust, is leveraging internal and external technologies to elevate mankind and to create more awareness. And yeah, and I also enjoy writing every now and then as well, and working on a book. So yeah, it is that.
So I initially started working, and I met Nikhil about a year ago. And why I chose to start working with Nikhil is he has the professionalism, but in the same time, there's this mysticism, and there's this, like he said, a visionary way of going about how to create something. And anyone out there, I highly recommend checking out what does Nikhil actually do. And I think he might have it uploaded now. It's a sound snippet where he takes you through a journey. It will be on his website. I listened to that a few weeks ago, and this is, my mind was blown. Like, he does this stuff, call it channeling, call it whatever you want, but it's crisp. He has never set it up before, and it's just, I mean, it's truth. It's an alignment. So um, anyone who might have a project going on, or even is in the, I would say, exploring what is on the frontier, on the edge, uh, even in crypto, Nikhil is a very intriguing man to check out and even have in your corner. And the journey I am curious about right now, how how did you get to this point to, this is not your ordinary trait, your ordinary job? What is your story like, even taking us back to the days of childhood in Australia?
Yeah, well, I've actually been reflecting on the whole journey recently and really been like recognizing, whoa, my life has been very, very different and divergent. And this is why I've ended up where I am right now. But I was born in Bombay. It's called Mumbai, now in India. And a family moved to Australia when I was 5 years old. And I was recollecting the memory when we were actually arriving on a Singapore Airlines flight into Perth, Western Australia. And we had about 11 attempted landings.
Wow.
On like crazy storms. People were praying, projectile vomiting everywhere, and literally thought I was going to die. And I'm like, oh, okay. All these transitionary phases of my life have been really chaotic, which was interesting. So in Australia, I had some family there, and it felt like it was a fun experience from my memory. We had, cute small home, plenty of space in Australia, and had great friends, and my cousins migrated over as well. So there was these positive memories of childhood, which I feel really blessed about. But then there's like, some years of my life, maybe like, 8, 9, 10, which are just almost even blacked out. And I do remember even being in my mother's womb, like legitimately. I have such a precise memory, but there's some phases of my life that have been just, deleted. So those childhood years, I remember being a lot of like anger in the household, a lot of things being broken, lots of like shouting, swearing, just general tension and being on eggshells. I really remember this feeling of like, when my father would come home, would he be in a good mood or would he be in a bad mood? And I would kind of like, I'd still love him so much, but I was very unsure about where I stood. And anyway, fast forward, my high school years, I was a bit introverted, but then towards the end of it, I really came out a bit and started to have great connections. And after high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I asked my mom, she said, do commerce because that's what she did. So did a semester of commerce, didn't enjoy that. I did a couple of years of psychology and I left that because I didn't necessarily agree with the whole data facet of it. And I was just kind of like going with the flow. There was a significant moment that happened when I was in that psychology degree, and I got connected with a girl very synchronistically and magically, and we ended up dating. At that same point, I started to, by 2003, started to see like the number 1111 on everywhere that I would look, on clocks, on like car number plates, on receipts. And I legitimately thought I was going crazy, like, because it was happening so consistently. I managed to Google it. And back then there was only one article about it, something to do with spiritual awakening, DNA activation. Now you can find a billion articles on that. And I was like, okay, whatever. So what ended up happening was this. I got thrown into like this amplified state of awareness where I was hypersensitive and I could feel spirit talking to me. Mind you, I was raised a Catholic. So there was very rigid dogma that had already incepted my consciousness at that point. And my first point of reference was the Bible. So I used to like read the Bible back to front and just meditate on it and wake up at 3 in the morning and say these like very specific prayers from this book my mom had to the Virgin Mary. And I would literally feel spirit washing over me. And it was quite powerful and profound.
Mm.
And then I got the guidance saying, you can now close the book, the Bible, and just turn within. So I literally just went into this deep, deep, deep process of introspection and meditation. At the same point, the girl that I was with, who I said was my first love, she was going through a process as well, because the 2 weeks into 2 weeks after we met, I was in her family's home with all of her family watching her mother pass away,
Wow.
like literally 2 weeks into the relationship. And it was almost like I was in some way destined to be there for her during her period of transition and grieving. And she was there for me whilst I was going through this process, which I couldn't really make sense of.
Right.
And it got more and more intense as I became more sensitive and more inwards, to the point that I used to see like orbs of light just floating around me while I was kind of walking. They would just swing, like flow by. I would wake up in my room at nighttime, then at least a dozen times I'd wake up and there'd be these phenomenally blissful and peaceful beings in my room. Sometimes it would be like white, sometimes it would be silver, sometimes gold, and they would just emanate this blissful essence, and it would just feel ecstatic. I would say that like I became so pure in the sense that like what I was eating, I couldn't listen to hip hop anymore. I didn't even want to like have sex with my partner. At least this was my perception of purity. And as a result, like everything in my life fell away because I couldn't connect to this reality anymore. Yep. And I didn't have any physical teachers. This was all some source, some awareness, something that was coming to me that was informing my process. And at the end of that, the relationship ended, and it felt like it was inevitable and it felt karmic. Although I was quite upset and angry with that, and I was also angry at the realization that had come forth with my sister about childhood and what had happened. That came into awareness at that point in time as well. And this left me, when the relationship ended, and with this awareness, I was like, pretty much like, I was like, fuck you, spirit. Even though I am spirit, I'm also human. And I ended up spiraling, or the pendulum swinging to the other end of the spectrum, consciously and unconsciously. Consciously because I needed to understand the nature of darkness and how my father could do something like that, or how Hitler could do something like he did. And also all of my own wounds, which I wasn't even aware of, coming forth. So the next few years looked like a lot of drugs, a lot of fights, a lot of womanizing, a lot of abusive, toxic behavior. And that would have continued. I would have probably ended up stabbed, in jail. I don't know. I remember on my 19th birthday, got in a really big fight, but it was about 5 or 6 people on just me and my friend, and I got knocked out. And I woke up in the hospital, and my friend was there, and we were actually having an argument together, and it kind of grew into this thing. But I had this massive like wound here on my skull, and like doctor was like, I wanted to check myself out. The doctor's like, have you seen your face? And he showed it to me. And because I'm just like a stubborn young boy, I'm like, fuck you, I'm leaving. And I just walked home. But that scar, like it turned into a massive lightning bolt, like Harry Potter, like exactly like that, which I thought was interesting. And at the same time, it's probably got some brain damage from that in hindsight, because who knows like what these impact wounds have in your life. But irrespective, I ended up getting a job when I was 21, working in an airlines in the Middle East. And this was just totally out of left field. Like a friend of mine who had tried to do it like 5 times and she never made it through, asked me to come with her to the interview. I was like, okay, whatever. I went there high and I got it in. And apparently it's very, very hard to get this job. And then I left the country within 2 months, and that was a saving grace. And I'll just kind of pause there if there's any questions before I kind of continue to part 2 and part 3.
Yes. So the anger that came up, how did that not show up earlier, like going into the trauma? Like, what is it,
Mm.
explaining to anyone listening to this? Like you were saying, all of a sudden these memories started coming up. What do you think happened, and why was it? Maybe it's protective mechanism. I'm sure you know.
So during that period of time, I didn't have any real memories. My sister had spoken to something, and
Mm,
I just recognized it. Little did I know that I had similar experiences, right? Because I had at this point repressed any memories or trauma so deep inside of me that I would not have any recollection that this even happened. Although I did have, like, I just hated my father. I just didn't want anything to do with him. And also just my relationship to myself and to the world was just quite skewed. And
mm,
I just couldn't make sense of it. So I was almost like in survival and just like moving through the motions, trying to find a sense of identity as a teenager. Who am I in the world? Knowing that I'm different and just finding things that make me feel safe, like, basketball or, smoking weed or just hanging with the crew and like almost looking for like pseudo ways to have my inner child feel safe and feel expressed, but not really having any clarity around that in any way, shape, or form at
mm,
that point.
mm. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next 9 years was, living in Dubai, and my life was great because I pretty much severed my connection to source after that, saying, fuck you. And so I was just flying around the world, um, partying when I was single, partying pretty heavily when I was single, and still getting into fights in Dubai, which was actually very lucky I didn't end up in jail because that's what happens there. And yeah, just kind of traveling the world and having new experiences, meeting new cultures. And um, towards the end of my stint there, my childhood sweetheart actually joined the company and we reconnected,
Mm,
and we ended up getting married. And that was also me just ticking the boxes and what I thought was like, well, this is what you do in life. And she ticked the boxes. She was beautiful. We got along really well.
mm,
That's pretty much, pretty much it, right? And although I feel a very strong karmic connection with her and something that we were obviously working through, but I finished my degree whilst I was flying over there. So also to tick the box, right? Because I'm like, as an Indian son, I'm like, well, mom wants me to get my degree. So I did it online. I used to just sit the exams in Dubai, business degree. I didn't really learn anything from the degree
mm.
other than the fact that, well, maybe I could start a business, which was worth the whatever $30,000-$40,000 investment
Mhm,
anyway.
mhm,
So um, I had pretty much reached the peak as a cabin crew because I was the manager, the youngest manager in the airline. Funnily enough, after reflecting recently, I realized I've always been a high performer in my own way, but
mm,
just never really like recognized that because I think that this is just the norm. Like I've got no choice but to just go for everything full on. But that also traces back to trauma. But anyway, when
So
it was time to
really quick,
leave,
so you were part of the cabin crew, and so you were on
yeah,
the plane every single day, pretty much.
yeah, I was, well, pretty much like I would say for half the month, I was in in Dubai, right? And the
Hmm.
other half of the month, I was flying and in layovers.
Wow.
So I've been to about 70 countries,
Hmm.
and it was intense. I had no body clock for 9 years.
Yeah,
After
that's nuts.
being a cabin crew for like 2 years, you you can organs, right? And if after 3 years, and this is roughly aviation physiology, you can't serve in a jury,
Hmm.
which just goes to show how that affects your body.
What? was your how for me having a rather structured schedule, knowing when I go to sleep, eat, what I eat, and so forth, how do you feel that affected you and your health and even other people in that industry? I mean, they look, at least from the outside, fairly healthy, but what is it really like?
A lot of makeup. Yeah, I would say honestly, it took me about once I left about 2 years to really feel stable again. And
Mm,
the 2 years that I had afterwards felt equivalent to the 9 years that I flew time, because my
mm,
perception of time and relativity was totally skewed. I was living roster to roster, like date to date, airport code to airport code,
mhm,
no anchoring point. And as a 20-year-old, like it was probably the best thing I could have done. I mean, that's relatively, it was just fun. I had the energy for it. And it was, like fast paced and dynamic, especially coming from Perth, which is such a small town, quite backward. And it was very unhealthy to be in a consistent zombie state
mm.
and feel like that's your baseline because you get so used to it,
Yep.
right? So it affected me, and I'm probably still affected by it. And there's probably some connection to, like you were speaking to, the chaos that I was trying to replicate as a child, because this just felt dynamic and novel enough to to kind of stop me from feeling whatever wanted to be felt deep down within me,
Mm, hmm.
right? But it was fun, and I traveled business class for like $200 for like years on end.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, the perks.
So what made you leave the the industry?
Yeah, it was like this because I was in that role, for a few years, and the next step would to be like some like a corporate role essentially,
Hmm.
like on ground, or to become the person that audits the managers on board. And for me, if I had to live in Dubai, I would probably kill myself because it's an absolutely soulless place and
Hmm.
just not, for me at least, like doesn't allow me what I need to thrive. And plus, I didn't want to be in corporate. And I just finished my degree and I had an idea for a business. So, as cabin crew, we used to get like extremely good discounts and like VIP entry at all the cool bars, nightclubs, and restaurants, and the gyms
Hmm.
in Dubai. And I was like, well, what if I replicate this model for, like the youth, young adults in Perth, and just like it could be very lucrative. So that was the idea that I had. So I came back to Australia with an idea, and I decided to implement it, and that was my first business.
Hmm. How did it go?
Well, there was a lot of learning. So initially, my idea was to get the businesses on board to partner with and to create like a card, right? Because we'd have like a little card. And I did that. I bought a printing machine and got some businesses on board, but realized very quickly that I didn't have the leverage or the networks to really like get everything in motion. But I'm very resourceful, and I did connect with one individual who had an entertainment business, and they would do a lot of the big clubbing nights, and connected in the food and beverage scene, and then ended up partnering with them and starting to build. And we ended up getting about 100 businesses on board in a pretty short period of time, and decided that, well, we need an application. So I ended up building an app myself. I'm not an
Hmm.
app developer because I just hacked a WordPress website and built a hybrid app
Huh.
using another service, and it was fully functional on the Apple Store and on Android. Um, this was almost before it kind of had an opportunity to succeed. There was some internal issues within the team dynamic. A, I'd given too much equity away. I didn't know. B, their own company, they were going through a $1 million, essentially money in escrow that they were about to lose. And that energy kind of like was infused into the dynamic. And I just didn't feel like ready, or I didn't feel like I was, ready to push the button on it, because it felt like some things were out of integrity. And it was a lot of lessons I learned from that, like a
Mm.
lot of big lessons. And if I were to do it again, I would do things totally differently.
Mm.
Yeah.
And how did life turn out for you as a next step after this?
That was a very pivotal next step. So decided to leave that behind. And at that point I was married. So my ex-wife was also part of the business. We decided to leave it. And I had one more free business class ticket left
Hmm.
to use. And um, my my wife at that point wanted to try an acting course in New York. So I'm like, okay, so let's go to New York. And went there, and we lived in Brooklyn for a few months. And while I was there, I was like, just wanting to, um, like further develop myself as a business owner and entrepreneur. And I decided to start to do some branding and building websites while she was doing her training. And at the end of that experience, she essentially told me that she had feelings for one of the actors in the acting course. And of course, I was kind of like upset, but at the same time, deep down, I was like happy,
Mm.
because I knew that this was an opportunity for me to return home to self. And I could feel like there was like a call inside of me to go in and to go deep, because
Mm.
even in my relational dynamic, I didn't have that with her. It
Hmm.
was loving but surface level and not deep. So that opened up a lot. And when we came back to Australia, it was, maybe a couple of months of the decoupling process, because it's not just hard and fast, because we
Sure.
both still cared for each other. And this is when I said to myself, before I get into a relationship again, I want to heal my relationship
Mm.
issues, right? Because I'm not perfect either, nor is she, nor is any of us. But I wanted to understand my own patterning. So I did some reading some books, watching some videos, and then I decided to do some Tantra work. And for those who don't know, Tantra is a practice of connecting with your life force, your sexual energy, your awareness um, to essentially activate your consciousness and to integrate your polarities and to come into wholeness. And within this workshop I did, it kicked up a lot of sexual energy, and then it kicked up a memory about my childhood
Mm.
and childhood abuse. And I did have some indications prior, um, which had come to my awareness, but this is the first time where it felt like, whoa, like this is something very significant and painful. And then that began a few years journey of just deep, deep, deep work.
Mm.
Yeah.
How did that deep work, what did that look like?
Well, it looked like initially, so in those first few months after, leaving the relationship and getting the divorce and just kind of sitting with feelings. I remember one night I was with some old friends, and they were all about to go partying that night. And I'd heard about like somewhere microdosing LSD somewhere. And I was speaking to one of the guys about it. And interestingly enough, he was an engineer that was working from home, living with my friend. And he's an artist as well. And he goes, hey, like, I've got some here. Do you want one so you can go and experiment? I'm like, okay, cool. So I had this little tab, and then we went out to the nightclub, and we had like a little VIP area at the back, and there was some substances happening there. But anyway, I go to my other friend. I'm gonna take this tab now, and they're like, what? I was just like, I was feeling very apathetic at this point in my life. Relationship had ended, like feeling like this strangeness inside of me, and just like whatever, right? And I dropped this tab of acid, and needless to say, half an hour, my whole world was absolutely blown away in the most powerful way imaginable.
Mm.
So it came on really strong, and there was some MDMA in my system as well. So this heart opening, and I could literally feel the life around me. And there was two girls with us, and I would literally see one of the girls shape-shifting forms in front of me. And I go to her, I go like, "I'm sorry if this is weird, but I want to tell you something." And she's like, she gets it because she has worked with, some psychedelics before. And I was speaking to her about 3 different lifetimes. And specifically, I was speaking to her about her childhood, how she was on a farm and with these cows. And she was just like blown away. Like she was like in tears because I could literally see into her childhood. And I learned a lot that night. I could see how energy worked in the nightclub, seeing the contrast of holding my friend's girlfriend, and she's loving and having the room lit up, and then seeing people essentially possessed by alcohol and drugs, and seeing them being possessed, and then going home that night and just seeing birds and light, and then the next day realizing that every single thing that I've ever thought was a reality was a total construct and a total lie. And then the next week, but 2 weeks later, I decided to purchase another tab, and I locked myself up in my room and just went in because I needed to understand, like, what is this? That opened up a gateway of exploration, which, because I realized very quickly that certain substances allow me a direct interface with my subconscious and unconscious. And because I feel very confident in exploring those realms solo, I was able to, but not everybody has that capability. It's just that I have something within me, within my ancestry, within my soul, that the unconscious, astral, non-physical realms, they're very natural. I feel very at home there. So there was a lot of exploration there, a lot of books, workshops, and what really was a powerful moment was when I was living with Stephanos, whom you know, and I was living with him and at his beautiful family home in Fremantle, Australia, and we were meant to go on a journey together with acid. And that day he was really sick, so he was just decided just to kind of stay and hold space. And I was really going through a very tough time because I was feeling this deep pain within my being, within my psyche, and this lack of forgiveness. And I don't know what to do about it. So my approach was, I'm going to take about 600 micrograms of acid, heroic dose, and just shatter my psyche open. And that's exactly what happened. I ended up just literally being destroyed within, to the point that if I ever even had one thought, the thought would just be these shards and fragments that would just be across the realm of my consciousness. And I was just like, put me back together, life. Before I was put back together, I did arrive at a place within myself where I was able to forgive my father, truly. And that was beautiful. And then somehow my consciousness came back together. But I remember I was on another planet learning some other language, and I was like all over the place. And funnily enough, Stephanos thought I was the whole time I was like sober. He's like, you look so sober, like, which is really hilarious. And then after that, I inevitably decided that it was time to leave Perth. I felt the call to Bali. It was either Bali or Kauai or Peru.
Really quick before we step into that, for those who don't know, who is Stephanos? What does he do?
Yeah, so Stephanos is a phenomenal leader. He's a relational alchemist. He's a coach. He's a healer. He's a very, very embodied masculine being who is really a great example of what it means to be an embodied man in this day and age. And he was actually the first example of healthy masculine in my life. And thank you for bringing that up, because I wanted to share one more thing when I was living with him, which is going to connect to the story. During the whole Me Too movement time. Like I had written a post. I was in the computer room. Steph was in the living room. I did a post around when I was in Emirates. Oh, maybe you can. Oh, anyway, it's fine. I was in the airlines. There was a moment in the first 3 months that I had been date raped, right? Like by a male. Okay, and
Mm.
it's something that I didn't really know what had happened until some years later, when a situation arose that brought it into my awareness, right? And I won't go too much into that, but I did the post and I'm like just speaking in my candid way about, well, I've experienced this and that, and I and humanity is essentially speaking to how fragmented our collective psyche is and blah blah blah.
Mm.
And then Steph comes into the room and he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. Like I didn't think anything of it. But for the first time, like he really like connected to me and was like, hey, like this is something that's big that's here. And then that kind of like opened up like a deeper introspection to be seen by someone that really cares about you, and
Mm.
opening up that, like that was very, very significant um, for me. And throughout my journey, still to this point, he is is the mentor and a dear brother of mine, and a safe space for the exploration of certain facets that can be quite challenging, right? And it's important for honestly everyone to have someone like that, and not necessarily have to do it alone their whole life, which has been my approach for the most part, which is just good up to a point, then it's destructive.
Yes, and I encourage anyone who feels called to like, oh, who is this Stefanos Sifandos? So Google his name, you'll find his stuff. I have personally engaged with quite a bit of his work as well, and it's phenomenal. His wife Christine Hassler, just an incredible couple together. So thank you. I mean, amazing how the two of you connected and just what you do in this world.
Yeah, no, it's a blessing. Sometimes, life sends you angelic beings, right?
Mm.
And throughout my life, and I'm sure throughout your life as well, um, the right people have popped up and have been able to provide and gift, whether it's an experience or a friendship, whatever it might be. And he's been a very beautiful influence. And yeah, and after that, I was being called somewhere powerful, somewhere like Peru, like or Kauai or Bali. I was about to go to either of those places, and then Bali was the space. And that was another deep dive into, just unfolding and unraveling and being held whilst different things were coming up. And there was one point in time where I was literally very, very close. Like I was like, I can't live anymore. Like it was literally, I was on the edge. And I actually had a friend from Perth who's a very intuitive. She just called me, she sensed me and was asking me, am I okay? Like, what's happening? And even at that point, I was speaking with Stephanos, and even he held me while I had a very, very, very powerful release and deep release. And
Mm.
this is the thing, the healing has been layers. It's layers, layers, layers. It's a long and challenging process. It can be easier with the right assistance, with the right guidance, um, which I wish I had, but so be it. So yeah, Bali did the thing. I was, serving clients online, assisting them with their business, with their embodiment, and then yeah, then I was offered a role as a creative director in a blockchain startup, and the kind of timeline went on, and I was working in a startup, developed my own business, all while creating ample space for introspection and healing. And honestly, that's been like 70% of my energy in the last 6 years has just been being with self, like feeling, unfolding.
So hearing this from the outside, it sounds like you're on this path of exploration and you're opening up and you're coming to all these realizations. You're forgiving your father, and then you come to a point where you're almost considering taking your life. How it's it comes as a bit of a surprise. What was it that happened there that maybe we as listeners don't necessarily see or feel or understand?
Yeah, so what it is the literal discomfort in the nervous system and the emotional heaviness and density that shrouds any sense of clarity, meaning, or purpose, and just creates the sense of like, ugh, being in this body is too painful.
Hmm.
Acknowledging that the trauma, all of our trauma, is stored in our body, in our cells, in our nervous system. And
Mm-hmm.
if that hasn't been harmonized, it's like we keep operating from there. And it's like, I was like, I don't know how to shift this. And it's just too much. And fuck it. Like, I'd rather just not be here. But I'm also, I know too much that like, I wouldn't, I wanted to go, but I'm like, oh, like, I'm just gonna have to come back and experience the same shit again. So it's kind of like in that dilemma. It's like, fuck, the pain is here whether I kill myself or not.
Hmm.
At least how I see it.
Has that been left behind, or is this still coming up?
So it's with respect to being here, I made an agreement with myself in a very deep state that I choose to be here on this planet.
Hmm.
I made peace with that, and I said to myself, and actually, I think that was actually that same big acid journey which I was on. I was like, I'm gonna be here, but if I'm gonna be here, I'm gonna live like full out. I'm never gonna hold back
Hmm.
on my truth, and it is what it is because I'm not gonna live life by anybody else's terms other than my own, which is how I live my life anyway. So,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm. So from Bali, you stay there while you're with in the creative director role?
yeah, I was based there. I did a bit of travel around, but Bali was home base for some period of time, and uh, yeah, and there was some big lessons in that startup as well, like a lot of things around in integrity and there were some things that came up which actually brought up old wounds as well, and I believe there was black magic that was involved and a lot of like interesting layers to this life. But I also learned a lot of phenomenal skills with respect to the space around blockchain and cryptocurrencies and just how technology is shaped and how it's going to continue to shape our future. So that was beautiful. It also allowed me to step into that role of creative direction and starting to hone some of my skills. Like my father, he's an architect, a designer. My grandfather as well. They used to build movie sets in the Bollywood back in the day. My grandfather's a celebrated art director in India, and like that facet of me, which like I have, which I've been bringing forth a bit more, um, and then yeah, then Bali really that phase ended at the beginning of last year around the COVID time,
Hmm.
which kind of was an interesting time because I was coming back from Bali and from a trip, from a 6 months traveling around Europe and around Asia. And then I came to Bali, then I came back to Australia, which was only meant to be for a few weeks, which ended up being a few months because of the imposed lockdowns and restrictions by the government,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I didn't like. But then I did manage to leave Australia. Um, the day that I found that I could leave, I left.
Hmm.
And then I ended up in Greece. And I think that's around the time that we connected,
Yes.
which is a year ago, because I just got a
Yeah.
notification today saying 1 year ago, memory in Athens.
Wow. Okay. How does that feel? Reflecting back on that, when we speak about this.
Yeah, yeah. It feels reflecting back on the whole life experience or on in the past,
Whatever you
it's an all
choose.
of
Yeah.
it. Yeah, it feels like that I've lived a very interesting life. And it was kind of intentional because even in my 20s, when I was in the airline, I pretty much lived the life of a millionaire without necessarily being one.
Mm.
Used to drive like BMW 6 Series. I had like a supermodel girlfriend, like traveling business class and just, living that life. And I'm just like, well, this is great, but it's also meaningless. And
Mm.
like, I realized that in a way, it was a blessing to experience a lot young. I've
Mm.
lived a really full life, but then also I've been cracked open a lot through my exploration of self, like through plant medicines, through meditation,
Mm.
through just what happened to me when I was younger, which is also, it's been a blessing because it helps me to stand in my conviction with what I know to be true. At the same time, it's been very challenging to reconcile the expansiveness of my awareness with the mundane nature of the human experience.
Mm.
And that's been my challenge, and it still is my challenge. Yet I'm excited about the challenge because if I observe myself now being 35 with my level of awareness, my skill set, my expertise, my connections, my ability, my knowingness and my ability to create consciously, like literally, I feel like the world is my oyster. I'm not going to
Mm.
say my, I mean we, because
Mm.
I believe in a collective creation. So I'm thankful and grateful for every single challenge that has shaped who I am today because they've all been gifts. It could have been easier, 100%, if I was equipped with specific tools or specific people. And it was exactly as it needed to be because I'm right here, right now, having this conversation with you. So,
Right. And for anyone who does not know, where are you and what did happen after Greece?
ah, okay. So right now I'm in Mexico. I'm in San Miguel de Allende. And I'll share the quick rundown about how I got here. So Greece was incredible. I would have gladly stayed there if it wasn't for my Australian passport only allowing 3 months. From Greece, I was planning to go to Costa Rica. I was also then planning to go to Bali again. I had a visa in motion. The moment that I was going to get my visa stamped, the consulate shut down and there was no end in sight to that process. So I'm like, where's next? Where do I actually go? At this point, Mexico was one of the only places that was open. Um, and I felt a little bit of a pull there, but I was resisting. But then I got very clear guidance, like it was clear as day that Mexico is the place that I need to go. So I knew a couple of people there, not like in person, just online, just kind of went there and a lot of magic opened up. 1 week in, was in a very powerful ayahuasca ceremony. Only my second. I'm not one of those people that sit with this stuff all the time. I've only ever sat with ayahuasca twice, and it was very, very powerful initiation into the land, and just seeing the spirits there and just the potency of what's happening also in the world right now. I ended up being guided to a friend of mine whom gave me her 6 bedroom house in the jungle to live in so I could create there. And this is all very synchronistic. So I spent about 9 months deep in the jungle. Of course, I was out of town as well, but predominantly in the jungle, just being stripped back, stripped bare. Very a very deep dive into the underworld, you could say that, where I was immersed in nature. So it was so beautiful, so safe. In a lot of my old patterns, my old beliefs, the old pain was coming up. And there was a period of time when I was going through a real death process whilst in the physical body, um, where I couldn't move, I could barely speak, I was in deep emotional pain, and literally like I was dying, and I was being, and I know that we were connected during that time, Sebastian, and
Mm.
yeah, it was a real powerful initiation. It was very scary and painful, yet I knew that there was a deeper aspect of me that was being shifted. And it was almost like my nervous system was being recalibrated, and a lot of pent up emotion was being released through me. And during this period of time, to give context, I've also been taking like a master coaching program that's actually Stephanos and Christine and Alexi Panos and Preston Smiles have created this program for master coaches, which is very much focused on trauma and somatics and a myriad of tools. So joining that program also started to kick up some stuff inside of me, but also
Mm.
provide more of a held space to work through these layers. So the last 6 months has been a lot of that deep work in the jungle. And then finally, about a month ago, I kind of got the go ahead that it was time to leave the jungle, which I was madly in love with. But at the same time, it's not easy. It's no small feat living in the jungle.
Yep.
That's for sure. And I recognized that. I'm like, fuck, I actually did that. And that's actually to be commended, because the average person wouldn't have lasted like 1 week there. And now I'm in the center of Mexico, in a really beautiful, inspiring town where I'm planning to ground down for a bit, because finally I feel like wait, I can just be in one space. I don't need to be consistently moving. I can just enjoy my relationship. I can like create things without feeling rushed whilst being stable, and I don't have to worry about anything. This is a new feeling for me. So I'm embracing that. That's where I'm at now.
So, for anyone where all these concepts in your journey sounds very wild, in the sense of how is it possible that you're going through these growth moments of almost near-death experiences and almost close to taking your life, and the trauma, and you're speaking in the sense that there are stuff underneath the surface that a lot of people might not know is there, and they don't know how to access. I personally experience it as it shows, everything shows in the body in one way or another, whether you like it or not, and it depends on how open you are. What are steps you think for a regular person that this might sound very strange to take, to even start exploring what might be underneath the surface, and why would they? What is the benefit?
Yeah, great question. Well, I'll start with the benefit first, and the benefit is, well, self-awareness and inevitably freedom, from whatever unseen ghosts from your past that may be influencing you in the present moment. And we have different layers to our mind. We have a conscious mind, which is our surface level interface with reality. Then we've got the subconscious layers, which it's the dream realms, and like these archetypical influences that may be shaping us, from society, from culture, from ancestral paradigms. And then there's the deep, deep, endless unconscious depths of our being, which hold so much wisdom and beauty, whilst at the same time, they hold a lot of the fragments of our psyche that may be lost or shattered. And these influences, they'll always seep into your current reality in some way, shape, or form, through some repeated behavior, through a way that you respond to environmental conditions, through your compulsions, your beliefs, whatever it might be. So if you desire, like I do, to be in quote unquote control of your world to as much as we can be, it's imperative that we start to understand our own uniqueness, our own energetic constitution, and what influences are still there, and start working towards bringing awareness and inevitable healing and integration of those parts. And it's a deep process. This is like lifetimes worth of work, right? And a very simple way to begin that process of introspection would be to begin journaling, like such a simple practice. And journaling, what that allows is, specifically when you are using a pen, and even better if you're using your alternate hand, because it creates a direct connection between your subconscious mind and this physical world. And you can start to bring to the surface and start to process what's within you, so that it's actually in this reality. And then that opens up potential pathways for exploration, which could be, like I recommend, working with somebody that's trauma informed, that can assist. And not everyone has been through like crazy trauma, right? Like being raped, or like, beaten up or kidnapped, whatever. You could have just been teased as a child one time, and that could have created a very powerful imprint in your psyche that could be influencing you today. So hence why I say, let's normalize trauma as a subject, because it's part of our human dynamic. And it's imperative, because end of the day, if you're like me and you decide to show up in your relationships, to self, to your loved ones, to your family, to the planet, from a place of wholeness and integrity, they need to come from a place of truth and transparency, where we're not always just projecting um, our like lack of safety or our compulsions onto others. And that's why it's important. Otherwise, we just create more shit for ourselves over and over again.
Mm. So even to this day, and I thought that I've done a significant amount of work, and so have you, there are, when I stop and I think, oh, I'm good now, there will always be something that keeps showing up. So this is a path of really being brave too, and of humility and surrender, and to let go of that you are going to know every single step that comes. And the bliss with this is that you'll experience states that you never thought possible. And then you're going to start coming to these realizations that you never understood, like what Nikhil and I were talking about in the very beginning. Why do I keep on recreating chaos? Why do we keep both doing this? And understanding before, you would have been blinded to it. But as you start opening yourself up to these hints, messages, intuition, call it source, whatever you want, then you start to understanding and loving yourself more and loving other people and being able to just enjoy life more. Because you're now just not going through it in a rat race blinded and knowing deep within that there's something that's wrong or off, but you just numb yourself with TV, whatever, pornography, whatever, cars, movies, anything. And instead you're actually, wow, I can just be right here, right now, and enjoy this moment because I love myself and just this time. And to say that, even for me, it's a rare occurrence because it's a daily practice. And that's when I hear you speak to your journey, that's what comes up for me. It's a hero's journey for sure. It's and it's damn sure worth it.
It's definitely worth it. I wouldn't have it any other way. And the beautiful thing about, experiencing pain and challenge and hardship in life is that it creates this opportunity to carve out depth, right? The depth of feeling. And only when you're able to feel such a contrasted experience, like, on one side there's love, on the other side there's fear. If you look at a spectrum and whatever emotions are in between that, then we can really understand the nature of fear. And when we can meet that with awareness and forgiveness, then we can transmute those experiences into just grand possibilities. And I personally believe that this is why we choose to evolve in this polarized way. It's because we can carve out and cultivate wisdom that we couldn't have if everything was just, love and light, so to speak. With that being said, you and me walking this path and being able to share our truth and guide others, it does make life easier for others as well. And we can learn as long as we are open. And it doesn't have to be endless suffering. We can equip ourselves with tools and resources to more effectively navigate just the day-to-day, like you were speaking to, the day-to-day navigation of the human experience, which is, it's not linear, that's for sure.
Yeah. So you have left the airline industry, and then you've been, how many years has it been now since you left?
It's probably about seven years.
That's a big leap of faith from what you're saying, the S model or the 6 Series BMW, the model girlfriend, anything that the luxury lifestyle. And I made that leap last year myself. Incredibly scary. A lot of tears, a lot of fears, anything imaginable coming up. But talk about the greatest adventure and fulfillment. What are recommendations, things to keep in mind? Anyone they feel like they're stuck, but they are too scared to make a change. What are things that you can share to them?
Yeah, you gotta ask yourself, like, what do you really value in this life, right? Do you know your values, and is the way that you are showing up really coherent with your values? Because if they're not, then you are out of integrity with yourself, and you're going to hate and resent yourself and others. And even if that shows up in subtle ways, that'll just breed into a cancer and destroy you. And this life experience is way too short in the grand scheme of things. And what really has compelled me is reflecting on, death. And I know that you're also practice stoicism in a way, and like recognizing that each day, each breath is counted, right? It's noted in a grand abacus in the sky somewhere. And like, if you start to treat your life like that, then you can get your priorities in line and begin to focus on what truly matters to you. And if you are not bringing forth into the world what truly matters to you, then are you truly serving your purpose here in this world? And the way I see it is that, in the same sense that every single aspect of nature, every single plant, every single bug, every single animal has a specific role in the ecosystem, so do we within our collective communities and within the sphere of thought around us. And your unique experiences in your life give you a very unique and individualized perspective on reality, which allows you to create something in this world that only you can bring, right? So I look at it this way: if we are not living fully at our edge, in the sense of like meeting our own edge and being true to ourselves, then we're kind of just taking up space on a planet that's already overcrowded. And personally, like, I'm not here to take up space and consume. I've done that. Great. I'd rather be in the sky somewhere. If I'm here, how do I express myself to contribute to the world, whilst at the same time acknowledging my own artistry and poetic expression? Because that's the deeper layer about that. It's like we're here to also be art in motion, to glorify creation through how we're showing up, through how we express ourselves, through how we move through the world. And it gets to be what you want it to be, this life experience, bottom line.
Yeah.
And it can be a copycat of somebody else's life, or some model that's been put in front of you that's just already lined up and has no uncertainty. It's just there. It's a cog in the wheel. Or you can choose to meet me on the other side of uncertainty and play in the abstract and unknown, and from that place bring forward creation into the world. And that's what the world needs: more originality, more creativity.
Yeah. Joseph Campbell has this saying, if you know the steps, all the steps in your life, then it's not your path.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
You're walking someone else's, you're walking in history. And the beauty is, anyone who might have checked out Joe Dispenza, you have all the freaking power to create what you want to create. But we have this loop in our head that it's protective, and it's our brain trying to make sense of things, that what has happened in the past, what other people are doing, that it's what's possible. If you come back to the present and start going with your brain, but also your heart, and really using your imagination, what do you want to create? Start becoming creative, and then take massive action and consistency. And there's a saying, if you're not sharing your gift with this world, you're doing the world a disservice. Because there's so many copycats, like you said. Like, we don't need another person doing the same thing. But if someone's doing something original, then hey, that is going to be helpful for all of us.
And to take that one step further, it's like the gift that you've been given in your life, it's a gift that you have been given by life, by source, by God, call it what you will. And it's not yours to withhold it from the world, right? It's like a bird that can sing, but has its mouth taped up. It's like, it's kind of cruel in a way. Like, your unique song, whatever that might be, is here to be birthed into the world, to help uplift and to harmonize this world, your community, your relationships, and yourself. And if you hold it inside of you, it's going to be a very, very painful and miserable existence.
Yeah. Nikhil, what are you working on right now? Whether that be inner work and also projects and creations. Maybe both.
Cool. Yeah. Well, they're all really quite interconnected. There's definitely an inner work taking place, which is just a consolidation of everything in my awareness and a deeper commitment to presence and to being in a state of pure awareness. That's the practice, not always easy, but um, it's high on my agenda right now. And what I'm working on specifically is we'll be birthing a men's container, a men's, not just a program, a brotherhood, which will have a few facets to it. One facet will be a 3-month online journey where some curriculum will be shared and there'll be some very dynamic experiences within that container. There'll also be a physical experience retreat here in Mexico. I'm actually checking out a ranch about 20 minutes out of town today with giant cactuses. So that, and also like an ongoing mastermind slash brotherhood. So that feels really alive. And I know that's also going to assist me in my own integration of my masculine pole as well. And the world really, really needs that. So that is the main thing that I'm working towards. And I'm serving some clients. And I'm also in the active exploration of developing a DAO, which means a decentralized autonomous organization, which is a new way of connecting and bringing people together in a decentralized way in order to create and birth new creations, to allocate funds, to create governance, and to just build a new dynamic way of interfacing with each other. So I'm looking at that, and I'm also feeling into what a beta interface would look and feel like, so that when I build this into the world, I can do it in a way that's very intentional and lean, and just start using the technology that's already available to start building this. So that's what I'm working on. I'm tinkering in my mind.
Yeah. With so much self work and such a fascinating journey that you've had, a big thing for a lot of entrepreneurs, this comes up for me constantly, is the financials.
Mm-hmm.
How were you able to make it work during all these years now? And even today, what are tips regarding financials for entrepreneurs or people who are considering this journey?
It's pretty simple. It's like spend less than you make, really.
Yeah.
Right? There's that, and go live in Bali for a while, right? Like, honestly, the big thing for me has been like cutting costs. And it's not because like I'm not a thrifty person. I'm not. Like it's never been part of, like, I'm more like my dad and his thinking, where my mom is like very good with money. But because I don't need much to make me happy, like I need like comfortable clothes, good high quality, vibrant food, like a nice place to live, and the ability to travel anywhere. That's it. Like I don't have big expenses and big costs. So keep your life as lean as possible. That would be like a first step. Look at where you are unnecessarily just leaking funds and energy, because it's the same thing, and just take care of that. And um, like as long as you've got a 6-month runway of savings to support you, like that's more than enough. Because if you're not going to go for it in that 6 months, you're never going to go for it, really. So it's just managing your finances, just keeping costs low, investing in important things that's actually going to move the needle, whether that's like mentorship or some software, or whether it is like you need to be in a really nice place. Great, because that's going to help you to feel the way that you need to feel. There's that side of things. And also being realistic, like kind of validating your model as well, so that you're not just kind of like kicking the tires and wasting energy on towards something that is not going to work, or there's no need for it in the marketplace. Because what's more valuable than your money is like your time, right? Like, because your time is literally numbered. So the more clear you are, around your values and what it is you're bringing forth into the world. And if you're willing to put in the work for the next 10 years on that specific creation, then it's worthwhile. And then you're going to have to go through the emotions and the initiation, because there will be moments, and like I've had, where like money has been like, oh, okay, it's $1,000 now. I'm like, oh shit. But then the good thing is like I know how to make money
Mm.
online. It's like it's this there's endless money around. It's just like how to get the flow working for you in a way that's going to support you whilst your needs are being met as you build your business. And of course, investing in the right places and being willing to take a risk as well, because entrepreneurship is a risk, but it's worthwhile, because I see entrepreneurship as creation, and we're
Mm-hmm.
creator beings. And
Right.
if we're not creating, then, yeah.
Nikhil, at 45 years old, what advice would he give you?
It would be pretty simple. It'd be like, play more, like laugh more, be lighter, like be lighter in your experience, because like it's not serious, right? It's like life is serious in the sense that everything that we do has a repercussion, but it gets to be more playful, more joyful, more artistic. So just be more present, be more playful, and yeah, have more fun.
Mm. I think that's a just wonderful way to say thank you to you, Nikhil. This
Mm.
has been a glorious journey, and yeah, I am so blessed and thankful to be working with you. And thank you for the medicine and your journey that you shared here today.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you, and you've played a pivotal role in my journey as well. So I want to really acknowledge that, and I'm just excited for the continual unfolding and growth and fun and play that's still on the horizon. So thank you for having me.
Nikhil, whew, thank you. If you're listening to this, even as a listener, I mean, this guy has helped me. I am working and have worked with him. There's so many phenomenal beings out there and humans who have worked with him. This guy is the real deal. He is just, I mean, check out his social. You can find it himself. Find it yourself in the show notes. So see what he's really up to and the magic that he's putting out. And if you haven't done so, if you want to repay the favor, if you want to be so kind and help us out in this pursuit of sharing this healing message, please, on Apple, scroll down, hit 5 stars on the podcast, and subscribe or like any platform, whatever you're listening. This helps us spread the message. So thank you for doing so. It takes you 5 seconds. So write a review. I mean, wow, that would be wow. And CrossFit programs. We have 2 of them. Methodical CrossFit. We have gymnastics CrossFit program. Phenomenal programming. I do it myself. The proof is in the pudding. You'll see it, feel it. I mean, experience it 3 to 5 days a week. Easy to follow along with videos, instructions. I'll be there coaching you as well. So if you want to check that out with a free trial with 15% off, Safina, all caps, 15 at safina.io or safinastrength.com. And I'll see you there. Sending you much love.